to 99. Jason Ross here with you. Carmichael Dave still out battling that sickness and that voice issues. But Kayte Christensen joining us each and every Wednesday at 8 o'clock, the Kings television analyst. Kayte, good morning.
Good morning, J. Ross. Geez, I didn't know that we could take sick days here.
Yeah, no, good point. Look, you're battling. Everybody's battling, right?
Battling for sure.
Yeah. I commend you. Look, it's obviously more fun when the Kings win, play well, or even if you get an entertaining game down to the wire. I was with you last night. I heard some of your analysis during the game. Like, look, some nights the schedule gets you. I didn't feel like that was it. That's what you said last night. They just got completely outplayed. And look, I still think in the big picture, Kayte, this is a good team. But to me, this happened a few too many times this early in the season for this team. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, it's hard to kind of discern what's going on when you look at their wins versus their losses. Their losses, too many of them come in by major deficits, right? And this is not something that we're accustomed to with this team. And, second night of a back-to-back, both teams playing one. We've gotten the Clippers on the second night of a back-to-back twice, and both times just really haven't come out with the requisite amount of energy and physicality. And to me, the biggest thing was the physicality. I think that from the beginning that it was really the Clippers that were playing forceful and getting up into space. And it felt like every bucket that the Kings got early in that game, they had to work so hard for. And it's something that we know about this team in terms of their identity. The 3-point shot and their ability to make it is such a huge part of their offense. And the big question is, when that shot's not falling, how do you respond? What do you do? How do you create offense and the ability to score when that major piece is not working for you that given night? And we just haven't seen them figure out a solution to it early in the season. But it's not just a physicality thing. I thought it was very much an energy thing. And as a team, you play half your games on the road, and the Kings played really well on the road last season. You have to come up with a way to manufacture your own energy. And they just, at no point in the game did they figure out a way to up that tempo, that energy, and create some kind of a flow for themselves. So it is a bit troubling that their losses are coming by such huge deficits.
Yeah, I feel like you can really get that energy, obviously, with you do what you do well. So if they're hitting a bunch of threes, that's going to just naturally give you some feel good. That wasn't happening, to your point. So what are the other ways? Getting to the line, scoring in the paint, or defense. And I think last night, when you're missing the energy and you're not getting stops, I feel like that's how it snowballed to whatever they were down 30-something points.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, defensively, and we've seen this with this team. This is, and I don't think this is, unique to the Kings. When you have offensive teams that have so much firepower, they create a lot of their defensive intensity off of the flow of their offense and hitting shots and getting back and being able to set your offense. But it cannot be that way for you to survive an 82-game season in this league and get to where the Kings want to get. They have to be able to use their defense to get their offense going. And it's just, they did. They got punked last night, and it just continued to snowball. There was never a period of time where it felt like they were going to be able to inch their way back in. And, it was, to be fair, it was pretty much everyone that stepped on the floor.
Yeah.
So, I'm really curious how they respond tomorrow against a very good Oklahoma City team. And that's the thing. It's like this team has beaten teams that are ahead of them in the standings. They have struggled with teams below them in the standings. And in the Western Conference, there's so much parity in particular that, you have to show up every night. And I have no doubt that being on their home floor, playing the Thunder, who they've played well this season, they beat them without De'Aaron Fox. You look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and that is just one of the best guards in the entire league. And this is a very good young team, very much like the Kings in that way. And so I know they're going to come back and respond. But the bigger question, of course, is how do they avoid these games where they dig themselves a massive hole early on, and then they're expending so much energy to try and dig themselves out. You just cannot play a full NBA schedule in that manner.
Kayte Christensen joining us here on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Kayte, yeah, you're right. If you look at the teams right now, the top six, the Kings would be fifth, but Lakers 2-0 against them. Beat Denver, beat Dallas, beat OKC, beat Minnesota. That's a perfect 6-0 against that group. And all their losses now are to four teams: 2 to the Clippers, 2 to the Warriors, 2 to the Rockets, 3 to the Pelicans. Generally, you see a team a second time relatively closely. You adjust, you figure it out, you beat them. How concerning is it that they're having trouble with the same teams?
Well, and the reality is how many of those came on the road? The 2 against Houston were on the road. The two of the 3 against the Pelicans were on the road. I believe one of them was on the road against the Warriors. Yep. And so, again, this is kind of, every season has a different feel to it, right? The Kings were a better team on the road last year than they were at home, which is a massive feat. And it's a great thing to be able to have when you look at the bigger picture of playoffs and so on and so forth. But you got to take care of home court advantage too. But, I look at the New Orleans series, the 3 games that we've had against them, and we got them 2 more times. They're a team that we do not match up well against. And so you can understand it to a certain degree. What I don't understand is because of the talent of this Kings roster, I don't understand blowouts. And you had blowouts to Houston, had blowouts to New Orleans. It's just and obviously the Clippers last night. It's just something that is really puzzling me. And I think the big thing, it's really 2 issues, right? It's their ability to hit threes and their physicality on the defensive end. And they have to figure out a solution to how they can play physically more consistently. But when you're not hitting your threes, what is the answer? How do you do it? You can't rely on De'Aaron Fox to get 40 every night and go to the free throw line 15 times. It has to be coming from other guys on that roster. And in the losses, we're not seeing people step up.
The physicality part, Kayte, is that something that has to be in you? I know it could be coached and pushed and prodded, but do you think they have enough of that just innately? Like, look, they got shooters, we know that, but do they have enough of that just presently on the roster, that physical nature?
That's a really good question, J. Ross. I mean, I think that some people have it in them, and I think a lot of people actually have to have it instilled in them. Yeah. And so I think that's what Mike Brown and Jordi Fernandez are trying to do, is to instill that physical nature into them. But in the end, you can only coach so much, and then it's on the players collectively. It's a little bit harder sometimes on the road because you might not have the advantage in terms of fouling situations. The whistle may not be as friendly on the road. But here's one thing I know: 1 or 2 guys can't do it, because then you are going to get called for fouls more frequently. But when all 5 guys on the floor are playing physical consistently, the game is going to be called a different way. And so it's got to be where you collectively come together as a unit, not with the coaching staff in your ear, but the guys on the floor, and say, okay, enough of this. We have to do this. We have to do that. And we're going to go out there and we're going to give it our all. And we're going to be as physical as we possibly can. And if we get foul calls, we get foul calls. We'll adjust. You can adjust your physicality down, but it's really hard when you come out and you're just kind of playing soft to be like, okay, let's pick it up a notch now, because you haven't started that way and the game has kind of established a flow to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And now I look at what is ahead, a 6-game homestand. I think everybody gets excited about that. You look at the opponents, there's some whoppers coming through here. And Kayte, the way the West is, and I think the way it'll be all year, a good homestand, Kings could be maybe the 2 seed by the end of this. A bad one, they could be 11th. I mean, this, I'm not saying it's deciding the season, but it feels like an important 6 games ahead for Sacramento.
It is critical 6 games, because when you look at the month of January alone, day after Christmas, they play in Portland, then they go to Atlanta, and then you're going to start seeing some East Coast teams in this. You play Atlanta, then you're New Year's Eve in Memphis, and you look at the month of January, and you've got a 5-game road trip, and then you come home, I think, for a couple, and then you have a 7-game road trip.
Wow.
Most of the month of January, the Kings are on the road. That's why when you look at this particular homestand, it's so critical, because the Kings have not been as good on the road this year. So you cannot start falling behind, where you allow the schedule to get you and think that at any point in the season you're just going to be able to switch it on and catch back up, because it's brutal. I mean, you look at every team's schedule is brutal. I was looking at Indiana's schedule the other day, and it's like, wow, like, how they end the season. Orlando ends the season. They're playing phenomenally, right? And I think that they're kind of under the radar for a lot of people in the league. And they're almost a little bit like the Kings were last year, where they were not good the previous season. And then now this season, they're, in the top of the standings in the Eastern Conference. They're beating big teams, and, Milwaukee and Boston and Denver, and they are just rolling through people. But you look at their schedule at the end of the season, it's like 5 of their last 7 are on the road, and 2 of those are their last home games against Milwaukee, and one of the road games is against Milwaukee. So the NBA, the parity in the league right now, I think for even the Eastern Conference, is just mind-blowing. That's why you have to really break the season up and say, hey, this homestand right now is so important, because we're about to go on the road, and that's a whole different beast that you're dealing with. So you kind of got to get your mind right here and start making some adjustments. And I'm curious as to how Mike Brown is going to, approach this, because we do know, I thought the group that came in at the end played well. They came in, they had energy, they played hard. Kessler Edwards, you had Chris Duarte, who got some time, and I thought he played well in the limited minutes that he got. And he was in the starting lineup for a while, and he's kind of fallen out of the rotation. But we know that Mike Brown switches things up based on, who's playing with the energy, the effort, and the defensive intensity that he is demanding out of people. So I'm curious to see, what does the rotation look like tomorrow after blowout loss? And the end score of that game is not indicative to what that game was. Yeah. It was an embarrassment on many levels.
As we head out, I got to get you out on this one. As a former athlete, certainly an analyst still in this league, Draymond, you saw the scenario by now. Just would love to get your thoughts on what the league does here. We've been asked the question, how many? I have no idea what they're going to do. What do you think the league will do with this?
God, it's so frustrating, because listen, obviously there's a thing with the Warriors and the Kings, understandably. And that's one of the things that is great about sports, is these rivalries. And I'm all about it. I'm not going to bash Warrior fans. I'm not going to bash people that have been defending him up to this point. I look at it from the player perspective, in that I cannot believe that he continues to put his team and his coaches in this situation over and over and over again, because he is, as a grown man, incapable of controlling his emotions. But I also know, just like with my toddler, that when they have outbursts and tantrums, which is what I equate how Draymond is behaving on the floor, if you enable him, it's going to continue.
Yeah.
And to me personally, I feel like he's been enabled by the organization. I feel like he's been enabled by the league. I feel like they've tried to come down on him with the 5-game suspension, and the suspension in the playoffs with Domas stomping on his chest, which I think a 1-game suspension there is a ridiculous joke, because if that happened on the street, it would be a much different thing than if it happened on a basketball court. And you have to start differentiating between what is acceptable in a sports setting and what is acceptable in a societal setting. And, they have said time and time again, with every suspension that they hand down to Draymond, that his past actions are being factored in to the punishment. So not only does his suspension, in my mind, need to really reflect the seriousness of his escalating behavior, Jason, but they need to get him in anger management. They need to make some requirements. You see what's going on with John Morant. They have markers that he has to meet. He's had to go through a lot of things off the court to earn his spot back on the court. And Draymond needs to be treated the exact same way. And there needs to be a severity, like the seriousness of this suspension needs to be really taken into consideration by the league, because he has shown that his punishments and escalating punishments in the past are making absolutely zero impact on his behavior on the floor. So to me, it's up to the league and the organization to finally say, listen, enough is enough, or you're going to be facing a long season impacting suspension. And so, I think the league needs to take it into consideration of the message that they're sending, but also, like Nurk said after the game, he needs help.
Yeah,
he does.
Yeah, and I think you said it perfectly about the enabling part. I mean, I don't know that I feel for the Warriors organization because they chose this, right? They could have not signed him. They know what he's meant to them.
I feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the teammates, because playing with someone like that, it puts you in a terrible position, because you have to defend him to a certain degree, because you got to keep your team united. But tell me any player on that team that thinks that behavior is okay. And then, you know what? I'm going to question them as a human being.
Right. And the part too, Katie, that I was saying earlier that's so hard is, like, it's not the same thing. Now, it's revolved around anger and / violence, but I mean, I wouldn't have predicted he would have stomped on Sabonis's chest. I wouldn't have predicted that he would run across the court and choke Rudy Gobert. I wouldn't have predicted that he's, flailing his arms and he backhands someone in the face. Like, these are things like, hey, don't do that again. Well, he may not do that exact thing, but it's something that's still revolved around. Yeah, exactly. That's revolved around anger, violence, hurting someone else. And fortunately, someone hasn't really been hurt, but that could happen, and we can't wait for that.
No, and that's not basketball.
Right.
And, I hate it, because my 10-year-old stepson watches every single NBA game that he can, get his hands on. And there's so many kids out there. And to me, that, I think as a mom, it has really changed my perspective on things. This is what we're showing kids is okay. And I swear to God, I'm so sick and tired of reading comments by Warriors fans. And listen, I don't care what team he played on, who it is. Stop defending him. Stop defending this behavior. This is not funny. This is not street ball at the YMCA or out on the street corner. This is serious. These are grown men that are massive individuals, and you're enabling him by making these funny comments and supporting his behavior and thinking that it's okay. I don't care what jersey he wears. Step out of your loyalty to the team that you root for a second. And if it happened to your team, if someone smacked Draymond in the face like that, you'd have an issue with it. But for whatever reason, some people are incapable of seeing it from the other side. And so again, it's this perpetuating this enabling environment for him. And look where it's getting him. It's not moving in the right direction. That's why the league needs to step in and truly consider a punishment and a solution that is going to put an end to this, instead of, like you said, it's just going to be another form of violence in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Katie, we appreciate your insight as always. Hopefully next Wednesday we're talking about a very successful homestand, or in the middle of that. We'll see you out at the arena tomorrow night.
All right, Jay Ross, have a good one.
All right, thank you. I was glad I was able to ask Katie about that too, because I know she'd have an opinion and a take as a former athlete. And even mom, a broadcaster, just all her roles there, and just it's a real puzzler for a lot of people. But you really got to try to cut this off. I got to thank my brother for sending me this on my personal text here, because we had some people here saying 20 games. Let's say the suspension is 20 games for Draymond. Let's just pretend that is. Guess who they would play in game 21? Right here. Sacramento, Golden One Center would be his return.
Rigged.
Wow. I don't know what the case will be. If we find out anything about that, we certainly will let you know. But the league office certainly looking into that. All right, let's check in with back to the phone lines here.